Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. Yesterday was the Hungarian Grand Prix. Unfortunately, I did not have time to talk about it yesterday, so we are doing it today in the morning of the Monday afterwards. It wasn't a very interesting race, but the things around the race have been very interesting for Formula One. I think we are in desperate need of a summer break. Everyone's getting a bit tetchy. It actually wasn't just in Formula 1, in Formula E and IndyCar as well. We saw, sarcastic clapping and people moaning on the radio quite a lot. I think everyone just needs to kind of have some time off, have a break, have a breather, get their head back in the game. It was an embarrassing race for a lot of people. And as I said, the racing itself wasn't particularly interesting. It was about what you'd expect. There's no real shocks at the Hungarian Grand Prix. McLaren 1-2 is a fantastic result for them. Oscar Piastri winning. I've seen stuff about how Lando Norris's attitude overshadowed the race and Oscar Piastri's achievement. It does not. It's a fantastic achievement by Oscar Piastri and no one can take that away from him. Doesn't matter how he did it. He was the pace setter. It's interesting from McLaren. You would think they'd want Lando Norris to be in with a shout of the Drivers' Championship, and with Max Verstappen losing points at this race, it was a good chance to close a very large gap. Maybe McLaren are already conceding defeat on that front, but it's short-sighted on their part, I think. I maybe would have just let Lando Norris take the win. It's going to be interesting to see how this continues on. I don't think Lando's attitude really made him look all that good, but I can understand his frustration. It shows a little bit of a lack of ambition on McLaren's part as well. And they only have a week to sort this out before we get to Spa. Maybe we'll see more fireworks. Maybe Lando is going to be trying his hardest to get his own back. I'm sure he'll be doing everything he can to win at Spa, as he should. As for everyone else, Max Verstappen was the other interesting one. The move at the start where he went wide, and both he and Lando were on the radio. He had to give the place up. It annoys me because in a race, I honestly think that Max Verstappen was entirely entitled to that place. I don't think he should have even been in consideration for being penalised for it. It was a fair enough manoeuvre. My issue is these track limit rules absolutely suck, and they have for years. There was a time when I just don't remember this being as much of a problem as it is now, and honestly I think the answer to track limits is don't have any. Let anyone use any bit of tarmac they want. Now, if you don't want them going in certain places, like say they could just cut a chicane, like just don't take the first corner at Monza, for example. Have no track limit rules, but have a consequence for going where you don't want them to go. Like at Monza, where they have the barriers you have to go around. They don't want to be hitting those, even those polystyrene boards, they do not want to be hitting them. The advertising hoardings, they don't want to hit them. So, there you go, that's the solution to track limits. It's safe, no one's going to get hurt, but it's still enough to get drivers to avoid hitting it. Or maybe have some gravel at the first corner at Hungary, closer to the track where the track limits are. You don't want cars going out there, there's a reason for them not to. If you had gravel there, they wouldn't do it as often. Occasionally you'd get someone who messes up and goes out. Boo-hoo, they've got to drive through the gravel. Maybe they get stuck. That sucks for them, but they shouldn't have been out on the gravel. I don't want like concrete walls placed around every track, turning them all into street circuits. Would get no overtaking. People would crash and just be out the rest all the time. But this nonsense that, I think as Martin Brundle said at the last race, that they got rid of gravel tracks because they don't want cars retiring from the race, because the race is more exciting with everyone in it. That's partially true, but at the same time, if Max ended up out there and there was gravel or a tyre wall and he crashed and was out of the race, does that not make the championship more interesting? Is that not the kind of drama you want? And again, it's on him to avoid doing that. I hate track limits. I hate these rules where you went wide at the first corner. There's not really anything Max could have done. I mean, if you want him to attack at the start, and of course we all do, then he has to go for it, and he shouldn't be punished for that. No one should. It's ridiculous. It wouldn't take all that much to sort this problem out. And yet, here we are. We still can't seem to figure out that having races decided by penalties, and the only overtakes we're really getting are people who have to give up places because they overtook in a way they're not supposed to, is not very entertaining for fans. And it'd be far more entertaining if we didn't have to deal with this constantly. Everything else in this race, Max Verstappen did have a really bad one. He lost his head completely. I'm very impressed with the strength of the Red Bull, because when he bounced over Lewis Hamilton's front wheel, that was a big hit, and the car continued on. Honestly, that amazes me, because they look fragile, but they do seem to be able to take a hit these days, these cars. So kudos to the strength of the cars, I guess. But this was a terrible race for Max Verstappen. Tyre strategy just didn't seem to go his way, even when he was catching. Like, he caught Lewis Hamilton. If he was patient, he'd have probably got past because he had the fresher tyres. He was never going to catch the McLarens. Even with the ridiculousness going on out front, they were well clear of third place. If he was just patient, I think he went for it, but with Alex Albon there as well, and either that putting him off, or because Lewis Hamilton had to go around Alex Albon as well, that put Max off. Whether it was the airflow behind the cars in front caught him out, it was still a bad shot, and he went hard on the brakes, locked up far too fast into the first corner. Stupid mistake, and it's something he should never have done. Clearly it's a bad move, and he should be better than that. I think this will be a very embarrassing moment for him that's going to get brought up a lot. But maybe it's something that he can learn from, I guess, if he needs to. Because if he just waited another lap, he could have had another go. I think at some point he would have done it fairly easily. I don't think he'd have caught the McLaren regardless. Maybe the team need to come on the radio and say, take your time. Don't worry about the cars in front of Hamilton. Just concentrate on getting third place, at least. Whether or not it affects his championship, I don't know. He didn't drop that many points, and obviously he had a big gain on Lando Norris at Austria. But it was still a bad race for him. As for everyone else in the field, it was pretty mediocre, as I said. We did get some overtakes, but not a whole bunch. It was the usual suspects out front. Ferrari did okay. Sergio Perez crashed in Q1 again and didn't really have a great race. He didn't make up all that much time. He was still kind of best of the rest. George Russell as well in the midfield, he struggled. Lance Stroll scored decent points, so good for him. Tsunoda scored points again. But otherwise, it was pretty much the usual bunch, and it's the usual bunch finishing outside the points as well. One retirement from this race, which was Gasly. Yeah, the race, I honestly wasn't blown away, and I didn't think I would be. In fact, honestly, it was slightly more interesting just because of all the whining on the radio and things going on track. Whining on the radio, where they pretty much all did it in this race. It really is the exact same thing as footballers getting touched by a light breeze and then rolling around on the floor for half an hour. I really wish it's something that would go away, but I doubt it will anytime soon. I don't think the FIA should be able to hear the drivers. It might give them less impetus to moan on the radio all that much. We have Spa this weekend. Last chance for Perez. Could be. There's a lot of rumours going around. I think even Red Bull have admitted to not being all that happy with him. And they have backed him. You can't say that Red Bull haven't backed him. They gave him a new contract and everything. It would cost them money to replace him and get rid of him. But honestly, they probably should. He is having a terrible year. But even at his best, he's not been great. He's taken a few wins here and there, but he's so far beneath the level of Max Verstappen that it's just embarrassing for him at this point. I wouldn't mind seeing Sergio Perez leave Formula 1 now. And that's kind of been true for the last couple of years anyway. Yuki Tsunoda to replace him? Yes, absolutely. I think that's an easy choice. He's definitely driving well enough to do it. So I can't see why you wouldn't give him a shot in place of Perez. It would mean, and they should get rid of Daniel Ricciardo as well. But if you're... I can't imagine them swapping Yuki and Sergio and having Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo at RB. It's supposed to be a junior team, and yet you have two really experienced drivers who are underperforming. I don't think you'd replace Daniel Ricciardo and Sergio Perez at the halfway point of the year. Too much change at once. But I think next year we'll see Liam Lawson back in that car, which will be great because he absolutely deserves it after driving so well last year in the few races he got to do. There are other Red Bull juniors who could get that second seat, such as Isaac Hadjar. It's not out of the question. That remains to be seen. I have issues with Isaac Hadjar despite being a title contender in Formula 2. He loses his head a lot as well. He gets very fiery on the radio. I don't think that's going to fly in Formula 1. I don't think it really flies in Formula 2 all that much, but he does it a lot. But the seats at Red Bull are interesting. Haas as well will have a completely new lineup next year. Ollie Behrman's coming in, and obviously we don't know who's going to have the second seat. Andrea Kimi Antonelli has admitted that he's not sure about taking an F1 seat, which is incredibly intelligent on his part. I think it would be the biggest mistake of his career to take a second Mercedes seat at such a young age. Obviously, Carlos Sainz still hasn't got a seat announced despite talks ongoing. Presumably Williams, but maybe he'll jump to Haas instead and try and stay in the Ferrari stable. If it doesn't work out with Lewis Hamilton and something happens that causes him to leave, they could just chuck Carlos Sainz straight back in that Ferrari. It's not out of the question, so maybe taking the Haas seat wouldn't be such a bad shout. And Haas are doing really well. Sacking Gunther Steiner has done them a world of good. They've improved massively this year. It's honestly the best I've seen Haas run in a long time. But even including the fact that Magnussen has had his issues this year, Hülkenberg been doing so well in qualifying, and he's been taking the odd points finish here and there. Magnussen has scored points. They're generally in the upper end of the midfield. It wouldn't be a bad shout for Carlos Sainz to join Haas. So that's my feelings on the Hungarian Grand Prix. It was a bit of an emotional one for a lot of people. Wasn't necessarily the most exciting race ever. It had its moments, I guess. It was better than I thought it would be. But this weekend we have the Spa Grand Prix, which is one of my favourite tracks in the world. I love Spa-Francorchamps, and hopefully we get a fantastic race there this weekend. Will it have championship implications? It remains to be seen. What's the fallout of all of the events from Hungary going to be? Again, I'll keep you updated if anything happens. I'm not expecting big changes before the summer break, but this summer break is long overdue. It does feel a lot later in the year, and I think the drivers do definitely need a holiday at this point. So let me know what you thought in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of the McLaren situation, what you thought of Max Verstappen. Do you think Lando Norris can catch Max Verstappen, or do you think this is still a fairly easy, comfortable win in the championship for Max this year? Let me know what you think. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more motorsport content. Thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry this video is so late, and have a good one.